Hi guys, I shot this video last night, but I didn't have my zoom right on my camera, so you can't see my head at all, which I don't know, might be a good thing, ha 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 ha. But also a lot of times came off sounding like a bit of a crazy person, maybe because you couldn't see the expression on my face. Anyway, so I'm going to try to do it again. Anybody watching this almost certainly knows what squirt is, also called deflection in some circles. I use squirt to be talking about the cue ball. I use deflection to talk about the shaft. The thing is, so I'm going to shoot this cue ball straight at that middle diamond down there. That's my shot line. That's the line that the shot is on. But if I come over parallel to that shot line, not pivot or anything. It's hard for me to come over parallel because I do pivot in real life. If I come over parallel to that shot line with right English, cue ball went to that side of the diamond just a little bit. Let's call that 1 degree. And that's pretty consistent. The squirt happens immediately. You may have also seen the cue ball started to curve back this way. That's called swerve. So the squirt happens immediately, and the swerve happens after some distance, depending on the speed and the dirtiness of the cloth and all that stuff. A masse shot is just an extreme swerve. A swerve shot is just a pretty wimpy masse shot. But what I say, we're going to call that 1 degree. So now let's say I want to counteract that, which I usually do. People usually want to counteract things like that. I just have to go 1 degree to my right of that diamond. And I can still put my right English on it. But now I'm aiming what I am estimating to be 1 degree further that way. And then the theory is, if everything else is correct, then the cue ball will go straight along that originally intended shot line. That's about all I want to say about that kind of squirt. I consider squirt to be the cue ball. I consider deflection to be the shaft. Whenever you hit the cue ball, any place other than the center of the cue ball, both those things are going to veer off that shot line. The cue ball is going to squirt in the opposite direction of the English. Right English in this case, cue ball is going to squirt that way. Right English in this case, the shaft is going to deflect this way. They're both going to deflect from that shot line some amount. Low squirt cues, the cue ball is not going to deflect as much, but that energy's got to go somewhere, so it's going to go into the shaft. If the cue ball doesn't deflect off the shot line as much, then the shaft does. If you have a cue like this, cue's probably that middle of the road, my Southwest, but like my McDermott, which is a really sporty shaft, it's not going to deflect very much at all. The cue ball is going to deflect a lot. There's difference between shafts: low squirt, high squirt, even all shafts. You know, there's a range. Now, I'm yammering on about horizontal squirt. And the reason I said horizontal is I'm going to introduce a term here called vertical squirt. And this is the part where I kind of started to sound like a crazy person. And there may be some physics guys out there like, "You're a crazy person, Dave." Well, it's quite possible, but this does explain what I see happening to me well enough. Let's say I'm going to shoot this 15 into the side pocket, withdraw. I just want to shoot it and withdraw. Hit the cue ball low. I hope everybody knows that that's watching this video. Follow through the speed and all that stuff. But what I'm talking about here is just doing that. Because I'm not hitting that cue ball in the center. I'm hitting it low. The squirt and deflection still happen, or still try their damage to happen. And this is the part that might get a little bit weird. It might sound a little bit crazy. And I'll apologize. So let's exaggerate just a little bit, and I'll be elevated. But like a Mike Siegel type of an elevation. You know, I always said elevate your cue a little bit. When I do this, when I hit this cue ball, the stick is going to try to drive this cue ball into the cloth. It's not going to do it because there's a slate down here. It's not going to do it, but it's going to try just a little bit. So there's 6 ounces of force pushing this cue ball down right now, say. If I have an elevated cue, maybe there's 6.001 ounces of force. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more. Some of the science guys like to say, but that's not enough to make a difference. To my mind, that's an opinion. You give me a number, give me a number, give me a number, and you can say, you know, well, yeah, cool, thanks for the number, dude. Then you say, but the difference between here and here is not enough. Okay, freaking prove it's not enough. Because otherwise it's an opinion. Anyway, I don't want to get off on that tangent. That's for another video. Let's level out a little bit, or get as level as I can get, because there's a table in the way. Hit it the same spot. Now the stick is, because there is still a little bit of a slant going on here, the stick is still trying to push that cue ball into the cloth. Still not going to happen, but it's still trying. A little bit of the energy that would be used to shove the cue ball forward and make it spin backwards is being used to shove it into the cloth. If you followed all that crap, the other thing that's happening is Squirt. Squirt is trying, when I hit this cue ball low, Squirt is trying to send the cue ball up in the air, to squirt the cue ball up in the air. Again, not happening, but so we got this 6 ounces of force pushing that cue ball down, gravity. 6 ounces of force pushing it down. If I have an elevated cue stick, maybe 6.001, what did I say? Ounces of force pushing it down, just briefly during that contact. Then the squirt is trying to pick the cue ball back up, so decreasing that force. It may end up being a wash with a level cue. It may end up being a wash to where the cue ball doesn't get pushed down, certainly doesn't go in the air. I'm not talking about a miscue, like the people you see in bars sometimes that think they know how to play, but they really suck. I'm talking about it's not squirting up in the air. But maybe it's just sliding just a little bit more easily, getting that, you know, with that backspin that I just put on it. Maybe it's doing that just a little bit more easily than it would have been if it started out its life being shoved in the rail. Even shoved in the rail just a little bit. The whole point of all this that I'm saying is, I think you want a level cue on a draw shot. Because that's what you want. You want that cue ball to have as little friction as it can have moving along the cloth out of its way of the object ball. And if you can just decrease that force pushing it down just a little bit, it's going to make a difference. Okay, you're not going to send the cue ball airborne without a miscue. You're not going to drive it into the slate and dent your slate. I hope not. But maybe just a little bit. Maybe you're changing it just a little bit. If you have your cue level, then the ratio of a squirt trying to push it up and just a stick angle trying to push it down, that's going to be more beneficial to the player if you want less friction. I really think most people want less friction. That's not a draw shot. I 100% believe that this vertical squirt happens. It's just not strong enough to actually lift the cue ball off the table. But I do believe it's decreasing the force of that cue ball sitting on the table, sliding across the table. just briefly, but it is a difference. And everything about a pull shot happens during that brief period of time when the tip hits the cue ball. Every bit of it happens in the direction and all of it. But if you can affect that, that's the only thing you can affect that could change the shot, make the shot better, make the shot worse. Yeah, anyway, that was shooting a shot with draw. I shoot a shot with follow. Let me go back to my Mike Siegel elevation again now, right? Like this. I was always one of Mike Siegel's biggest fans, still am. Not knocking the guy, I'm just saying that's one of the things that he said was elevate the stuff. I don't know why he said that. That's what he said. Anyway, when I come in, I'm going to hit this with top. Now what's going on is the stick, because the angle is trying to shove that cue ball into the cloth. And the squirt, because of where I'm hitting the cue ball, is trying to squirt the cue ball down into the cloth. So that could potentially, and I believe it does, increase the friction between the cue ball and the cloth. For that instance, when all this is happening, when they're all hitting. And I believe that if that's the case, you're not going to get as much follow. If everything else is the same, I didn't know I knew that shot, did you? Me either. If I have a level cue, I still got the squirt trying to push the cue ball down into the cloth, creating friction. Maybe I don't have the stick trying to push the cue ball into the cloth. In some cases, you can even go a little bit beyond level because you're hitting up. So maybe I'm hitting up. Whoops, hitting up into the cue ball a little bit. If I'm in a situation where I'm hitting up in the cue ball, then some tiny microscopic amount of force from the stick is trying to push the cue ball up off the table, reducing friction. I still got that squirt trying to push it back down. But this just goes back to the same thing I just said about draw. It's a level cue. I think you get more follow. If everything else is the same, level cue versus the elevated cue, I think you get more follow with a level cue. And I think if you're in a situation where you're actually shooting up at the ball, and I honestly can't tell if I am or not. It looks to me like I am shooting up the ball, but that's from my perspective. From a side perspective, I don't know. Looks to me like I am. I don't feel like I have to hit it as hard to get the follow. And one of the questions that may be asked, besides where do you get the crack that you're smoking, Dave, might be, well, if hitting up into the cue ball is so great, why don't you do that on draw shots as well? Why did you just say hit level? Oh, because you can't hit up on a draw shot. I don't think it's possible. Even if you don't have the cushion in the way. Even if you don't have the cushion in the way. Man, it's still in my damn way, isn't it? I'm hitting low on the cue ball because it's a draw shot. I don't think I can put the cue under the slate and still manage to hit up. Let me just look at this here. I don't think this is something that any sane person would ever do, but I think I've already said that I sound a little bit crazy in this video. So if I take my cue right now, just lay it on the table. Butt of the cue is as low as it can get. Yeah, so then I can move the tip end up a little bit. And I guess that counts as hitting up into the cue ball. Oh God. But you can't grip it. If I could, okay, fine. The stick wants to get the cue ball up in the air. The squirt wants to get the cue ball in the air. These are both good things. I remember a shot a million years ago. I don't remember. I always want to say it was St. Louis, but it might have been Memphis. But Louis Roberts doing the spin cut thing on this 13 into that corn. And his secret to shooting the shot was he jumped the cue ball down there. So cue ball's in the air. It's not losing any spin while it's in the air. Of course, it lost spin before it left the table. But Louis Roberts was a slightly talented individual. But that's what he did. Yeah, I'm not even going to shoot it. Y'all thought I was going to shoot that. I didn't feel like showing off on that shot, I guess. But this is going to be talking about vertical squirt. And while I was doing the video last night, it kind of had another thought come into mind. Kind of probably a stupid thought. But if I'm shooting this with draw, I want Squirt. I want Squirt to try to get that cue ball off the table. I want to decrease the force of this cue ball being pushed down by gravity by however much I can. So I want Squirt. If I'm shooting a follow shot, I don't want Squirt. Because on a follow shot, Squirt is pushing that cue ball down where it's already being pushed down by gravity. It's probably already being pushed down by the stick itself, unless I can come up or with a level cue. So the thought that I had was, seems to me like with a draw shot, you want a squirty cue. With a follow shot, you want a non-squirty cue. And I don't know if such a thing exists. I'm picturing some things. So I got this. I got some synergy shafts in my case. Can you just imagine a player, every shot they shoot, if it's going to be follow, they go get the low squirt shaft, put it on. If it's going to be draw, they go get the high. No, that wouldn't ever last. They would absolutely make a rule about that, and I wouldn't blame them a bit. Maybe you just find a compromise, or maybe you just get used to it, or maybe it doesn't make enough of a difference, like a lot of the science guys would say. I just think it makes a difference. It makes sense in my head. I'm not a physicist, but I'm also not an idiot, and I am a pool player, so it kind of makes sense in my head. It just may not be worth it, and we don't have cues that can magically switch between high squirt and low squirt that I know of. What makes, as I said before, when I shoot the cue ball anywhere but the center, the cue ball and the shaft are going to deflect off that shot. The ratios will differ depending on whether it's a high squirt shaft or a low squirt shaft or whatever, but they are both going to deflect. One of the main things about determining that, one of the main things about what makes a low squirt shaft is basically the mass, the weight at the end of the cue, at the tip end of the cue. I've seen different numbers, 8 inches, 10 inches, whatever. I don't know what it is. But my understanding is if this is very light, let's say whatever the area is in front of my bridge is very light, and then it hits a 6-inch cue ball or 6-ounce cue ball, it's going to be more likely to deflect than it would be if this was made out of lead or something. If this was made out of lead, it probably wouldn't deflect as much, and the cue ball would because that energy's got to go somewhere. So I've in my alcohol-addled brain last night, I was imagining a shaft with some type of a variable thing going on. Just imagine something simple that I've got something that I can clamp on right here, a pipe wrench or something. Going to add some weight and add some mass. Going to make this a very high squirt cue. And then when I come along, like now I got a follow shot. Take this pipe wrench, vice grips, whatever, shove it down here, clamp it on down here. And now this is really light. Maybe this is all hollow or something like that. Yeah, maybe something like that would actually work. There hasn't been. Oops, I almost made that shot again. There hasn't been any research in that area that I'm aware of. Maybe because it doesn't make enough of a difference. Maybe because it's stupid. Uh, I can almost guarantee that if they invented something like that, that the whiny crybabies would march to Washington and put a stop to it eventually. But it might be interesting to find out. I'm not going to clamp vice grips on my cue or anything. Just something I was just thinking about. Trying to hit up at this ball. See, does that seem different than it would have been with a level cue or even a cue elevated? I don't know if it seems different or not. For now, hitting up at the cue ball like that, that's kind of taking all my concentration to just trying to make the ball. But I'm going to keep messing with it, and if nothing else, it'd be fun for me to mess with stuff like that. I watched this video on YouTube last night, and I'm digressing away from the whole squirt crap right now. It was Max Eberle interviewing some players. Questions about, what was the 3 questions? Give me a one-word answer for what you need to be a top player or something like that. And people were saying, discipline, practice. One guy said sleep. So like that. I would say enjoyment. Although discipline is a really good answer too. But I would say enjoyment. But the second question was, what's the advice you would give to up and coming players? I don't know. For me, it would be whatever they're potentially doing wrong right now. Say don't do that. So it would be up to the player. I think for me, and I'm not a top player. The third question was, what did you have to give up to be a top player? Like I just said 15 seconds ago, I'm not a top player. So I can't really answer that question, except to say that back when I felt like there was potential for me to maybe be a top player, there are things that I didn't give up. I didn't give up my social life. I didn't give up my wife and my kids. I didn't give up my job. I just played pool as much as I could. So maybe to be a top player, I would have had to give up all those things back then. That wasn't going to happen. And I don't regret that. I think I'm done with this video. And hopefully I won't sound too much like a crazy person. And if you watch the whole video, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.